Hello everyone, this is my review of the Nikon F-301. I picked this camera up for £10 second hand from a charity shop and took the gamble that I might get it home, put batteries in it and it doesn't work. But when I got home and powered it all up, it was fine, and this camera is like new, so it was quite a bargain to only pay £10. So I'll run through kind of history of the camera and the main features. I'm going to give you my thoughts. So the Nikon F-301, otherwise known as the N2000 in America, is a manual focus auto exposure, auto film loading and auto film advancing camera sold in 1985. It was identical really to the Nikon F-501, which was known as the N2020, in virtually every way except for one big difference, which was that camera had auto focus, whereas this is a manual focus camera. It's also notable for being Nikon's first SLR sold that didn't have a film advance lever, as you can see, no film advance lever. So this meant that you could have a kind of built-in motor drive for continuous and, let's see, you can see that, continuous and single shot, and you lift that up and you can set it to continuous single shot or L to lock it, which turns it off. It's also notable for being the first Nikon to use polycarbonate in the body of the camera. It has DX film decoding, which you got the normal ISO dial there. You lift this up, so pull this up, and then you can turn it. You keep going, and then you've got DX there, and then when that is set, it will be able to tell the ISO on the film. It doesn't have a flash built in. The first Nikon to have that was the F-401, which I've got here. Also, this was picked up. Oh, sorry, this was also picked up cheap from a charity shop. And this camera I don't particularly like, and it's sort of collecting dust on a shelf, but you can see it's got the flash there. You pinch those two in and that pops up. That's not something, I don't really use flash, that's not something I'd want to add to the weight of the camera, so I'm quite pleased that this camera doesn't have that, the F-301. Okay, so when I got it home, I had to check it worked. So there's a little there, and you use a coin, and well, I've loosened it already, but let's take this off. This slides off, and then I've got triple A's in there, and this sits in a housing like that, and you pop that in. And I have to say, I found that really hard to get the batteries in there and then get this in. Took about 8 attempts until I realised that I had to line up the two white dots, and I was doing it the wrong way round. It really confused me. I had to go online and read the manual before the penny dropped that was how you did it. But once you know, it's obvious. So just turn that. Wait a minute. There we go. Right. So that is a quick overview of the camera. When you actually pick one up, because I've seen these on eBay before and thought that's not really a camera I'll probably go for, but when you actually pick one up, it's got a really nice weight to it. Apart from the top plate, which is plastic, the rest of it's all metal. And I'm looking forward to putting some film in this and taking it out to shoot. A couple of things I noticed is this kind of came out in the era of AI and AIS lenses. So if I take this 50mm lens here and line up the dots and turn that, that'll work perfectly as a manual focus lens, as a manual focus camera. But what you have to be careful about is that little prong there that couples with the lens and tells you the aperture. If you were to own, such as I do, a pre-AI lens like this that doesn't have the cutaway slot like that does there, if I was to try and mount this, because that isn't there, it would, and this tab on some cameras you can push that back. On this camera you can't push that tab back, so if I was to mount this lens on here it would damage that and break the camera. So you can't use this with pre-AI lenses. Now I actually have a 50mm 1.4 here that has been AI converted, so it has that slot. So this will work. There we go. And you can see that's moving the tab. But if it doesn't, like on this lens, there's no step there, no slot, that will basically damage the aperture tab. So just something to be aware of. It's actually a much nicer camera in the hands than I was expecting. To try and give you an idea of the size, let me just move a few bits out of the way. Here is a Nikon FE. Let's see if you can see. So it's a bit bigger. It's about the same height. You know, it's not that different. It's definitely heavier. In fact, I would say it's more like the weight and the size of a Nikon F3, and in a lot of ways looks quite similar. Although obviously you can't remove the prism. This was kind of for your consumer level camera, whereas the Nikon F3 was at pro level. But they're about the same weight, they're about the same exact size. But obviously, the advantage of this camera is that once you turn it on, and I'll put it back to 400, let's say. Now if I tried to turn this on and take some shots to show you with it on DX, that light will come on, it'll beep at me and say there's no film in here, because it's looking for film when it's on DX. But by setting it to F400, I've kind of put it in a more manual mode, and it'll allow me to take the L, set it to single shot, and then I can, now it does that the first time because it kind of is winding on to the first shot of the film, and then after that it's single shot. But that did throw me. I thought, why is it firing 3 shots when I first got it on a single shot there? And that is one criticism of this camera would be, if you're trying to squeeze the most shots out of a roll of film, you won't get that with this camera. It advances to the first shot by firing a couple of shots off at the start. But you know, you'll get 36 out of 36 roll, etc. And then you've got continuous. I believe it's 5 frames per second is the maximum this can go for. There's a kind of silent and beat mode as well. If I set, sometimes on dial to change it, it won't let you. Like there, it's locked on aperture priority, so that's A for aperture priority. You have to push down the little metal tab here, and then that'll allow you to set to then go through and set the shutter speeds. But it's really straightforward. You set the aperture on the lens, you manual focus. I would leave it in aperture priority, and I can just set the aperture and it'll auto expose and get the right exposure for me, because it's got a light meter built in. But if I wanted to, I could set the shutter speed, and I'll look through the viewfinder and see if I've got the right shutter speed for the aperture with what's shown through the viewfinder. There's also a couple of program modes which I'm never going to use. There's program, which is kind of like an auto mode, and there's an auto program high, which is an auto mode but geared more towards sports. I'll be shooting in aperture priority. And then the only other thing really to cover is that when you want to rewind the film, you hold down the little R, and then it allows you to slide this tab over at the back. Let's see if you can see that. You slide that over at the back, and that would rewind the film. Sorry, that would allow you to then rewind the film manually. There is no auto rewind, which is a bit bizarre because you think it auto advances the film, it auto loads the film, but you still have to manually rewind the film. So it's a real mix of kind of older cameras, well, cameras that were around at the same time, but to some extent, like the Nikon FE, which is you have to rewind the film, but in this case, obviously, you have to forward on each shot, whereas with this you don't have to. With the F-301 you don't have to. So some of it is automated for you. And what I read was that at the time compact cameras were getting more and more popular, and Nikon were trying to compete and get people to still buy SLRs. People going out and buying little compact holiday cameras, much smaller than this. And so they'd start putting features in that weren't on like the Nikon FE and those sorts of SLRs. And so things like auto-loading the film, auto-advancing the film, were ways to get people to keep buying SLRs. I have to say, for the size and the weight, considering it's about the same as an F3, to have it wind the shot on for you, to have a built-in motor drive as well, you're getting a lot in a camera body, you know, that I haven't got in my F3, which is a really nice camera, and I prefer it just because it's built like a tank and it's going to go on forever. But you quickly get used to not having to wind the film on, which is great. And having that motor drive there, if you really want it, is nice. It's nice to have it there, and if you're not going to use it very often. Okay, so that's it. If you're enjoying these videos, like and share, or leave me some comments, and I'll try and reply to you. Thank you very much. Cheerio.